Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Super excited to talk to you. I know we've been talking about it for a little while, so thanks for coming today.
Well, absolutely. I had nothing better to do. I mean, it's not like I could be out doing like things out in public. So yeah, this is a perfect way to break up my day.
Well, and you get to reuse your backdrop. You use that for graduation or something like that. Is that
Yeah,
right?
we had a big ceremony on Saturday night for my drama classes, and it was an award show.
Okay.
So I figured, okay, well, if we're doing an award show, we might as well get kind of fancied up or whatever. And the funny thing is the streamers that are up behind me we used them at my wedding party. So 20 years ago, when my
Oh,
wife and I got married, these were our backdrops. So
that's
and I
awesome.
found them just yesterday up in the attic, and I was like, hey, wait a minute, I could put that up and kind of have a fancy looking background.
Yeah, this is why you don't throw this stuff away, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's probably terrible to throw away too. So, but now I look like I'm on a 70s game show.
That's awesome, right? You don't have to put the fake background behind you. You've got
No,
the
I
real
have
deal.
to look fake enough.
That's awesome. Well, I'll start by just telling you a little bit about Rad Dads, so you know kind of what we're all about. So Rad Dads is a community organization. We're based out of Edmonton, Alberta. Basically, the idea, it's not too complex. It's just to encourage dads getting out, meeting other dads, sharing information, getting out with their kids. We put on some community events. A lot of us are interested in things like punk rock and skateboarding. So lots of events around that. We put on some all-age shows where even the 2 and 3-year-olds come and wear the protective headgear and stuff,
Yeah.
and just kind of some stuff to get parents out with their kids. And it's not really just for dads. Obviously moms and other caregivers are are welcome, and whoever else. But try and raise a little bit of money for some local charities, and just get people out involved in their communities. So that's really all it's about. And so as one arm of that, we do the Rad Dad Show, which is a podcast. We interview artists, musicians, anybody who sort of, kind of has maybe a unique take on parenthood, and it's a way to, I guess, get dads inspired and thinking about, what the people that they look up to, how they approach parenting, and more often than not, that they're struggling with some of the same things you are
Yeah.
as a parent. So that's what Rad Dads is. So yeah, thanks for coming on the show. Who are you?
Well, so Chris Shary, I have several things that I do. My bread and butter thing is I'm a high school drama teacher in Northern California in Stockton. I've been teaching drama now for, I guess it's been 17, 18 years. I've been in Stockton now for 18 years also. And so, okay, so I've been teaching drama 17 years. I'm a trained art teacher that kind of I agreed to do drama for a year, and then I wound up just getting here for a while.
Yeah.
So I do that. But on top of that, like my side job that most people would know anything from me is I do artwork for virtually every punk band you can think of, large name punk bands I've been doing artwork for the past 30 some odd years. And I'm kind of the main go-to guy for Descendants. So any Descendants all stuff that you've seen, it's more than likely that's my work. So I guess that's who and I'm also a dad. Yeah, I guess I should mention
Right.
that. Yeah, my
Yeah.
son is 17, and he was born the year after we moved to Stockton. So he's lived in Northern California his entire life.
And what's your son's name?
So my son is Sam.
Okay, nice. Well, that's great. Yeah, certainly. That's how I got to know you, as the Descendants and all art and stuff like that. I've got lots of your stuff around my house, and I'm wearing a few of your things right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're stoked to have you on the show. So you got one son. What
Yes.
what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of being a dad?
That's a really good question. Knowing that I'm preparing somebody to make things better in the future I think is the most rewarding thing. My son is by no means a cookie cutter mini me. He's definitely marches to his own drummer, and but he is one of the most compassionate, kind, funny people that I know, and having produced this child that we have helped rear so that he could be the best possible person that exists. I have to imagine that if other parents are doing things similarly and they're really actively trying to have a good child, that the future is bound to get better if everybody is really dedicated towards that goal. And certainly we have been. I mean, from the very, very get-go, and not like we're trying to create like some super child or anything. That by no means is what we're trying to do. But we wanted somebody that understood, compassion and caring and creativity, and we've done that. I mean, I could not be more proud of my son. So, I think that's been the most rewarding thing, is that knowing he will be a functioning member of society when he's done being at home. And who knows how long that'll be. I mean, he's 17 right now, and he'll be a senior next year in high school. And I don't really know what's going to happen after that. He could wind up staying with us for, years afterwards, but he might, go off to be in Liverpool, England, for all I know. And so if that's the case, I want to make sure that he's doing his best to make the world a better place by him being in it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a pretty common theme, right? Just that feeling of kind of raising someone to be a functional kind of member of society and teaching them the things that hopefully that you think are important, and helping them to be a good person. It doesn't really always matter what they're doing. It's just knowing that they're sort of a good person inside. So it's funny, you said he's by no means a cookie cutter of you. So what do you attribute that to? Like, a lot of people say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It sounds like maybe that's not the case for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are similar to us, but he falls somewhere on the Asperger's spectrum, and so because of that, there's other things that are operating. He processes things in the world differently than I do, and by no means does he process things wrong or inaccurately. It's just the way that he gathers information and deals with that is very different than how I would. So what I might think would be a really logical way to get to, point A to point B, he doesn't see things that way. So because of that, I mean, his neurons are actually firing in a different pattern. So he is very different because of that. And again, it's by no means that, it's wrong or different or whatever. It's just not how I do things. And I find a lot of times, my wife seems to get a better idea about like where he's coming from with something. And I'll just go, how did those two things connect? And she's like, oh, well, because blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense to me. So I think it's really attributed to that. And also when he was really, really young, he got okay, so it's kind of a longer story, but I'll go into it. So the back of the home that we're living in right now had burned before we moved in. And the paint that was used on the house was lead-based paint. And the paint then got chips into the soil in the backyard. Well, our son was anemic, so when you're anemic and you're an infant, you have this natural tendency to eat dirt because you're trying to get things balanced in your system. So he was eating dirt, but he was eating way more dirt than like you should normally eat. So we took it to the doctors to say, hey, we're a little worried about this. Maybe he has anemia. Maybe there's something going on. No, he's fine. All kids do that. So, okay, well, we're worried about it. And it kept going on for a while, and we got really, really concerned. And so we finally took him in, and they said, well, we need to talk to you about his blood levels because his blood levels have lead in them. And he essentially had poisoned himself by the lead paint chips that were in the backyard in the dirt that he was eating. So it created some lasting damage to his fine motor skills. So he had a very, very difficult time writing and forming letters and doing all that kind of stuff. So while his brain might have been saying, I want to draw, he would start doing that and get really discouraged because his hand wouldn't do what his brain was wanting it to do. And so he got really discouraged of doing that and was unhappy with his handwriting and the way that he formed things. And so after just kind of like having a lot of difficulty with that, he just kind of backed away from that almost entirely. So I had always just assumed, I'm going to have a kid and he's going to, be really excited about drawing and everything. And while he might be excited about it, he can't physically make himself do what his brain would like him to do. And so because of that, he didn't like pick up, crayons and just like go nuts and like following in my footsteps.
Right.
There's no way that that's going to happen because there's some very serious damage that was done. And luckily, they had said the lead damage wasn't anything more than just his fine motor skills. But I have to wonder if that didn't attribute to some of his challenges in the way that he processes things. So, it was really very upsetting, actually. I mean,
Okay.
to know that we had taken him in and we had asked for help on something that was more or less ignored. And then it got to a point where it actually did cause damage. And, he's very aware of it. And it's something that, he's a little sensitive about, understandably. So I think, how I attribute him being different is kind of maybe attributed to some of that.
Right. That must have been so stressful for you guys. First
Yeah.
child, young parents, sort of realizing that something is wrong here, right? That's a familiar thing to lots of parents, right? With kids that have things go wrong when they're young. So scary. So how did you guys sort of begin to cope with that? Like, what was that like for you?
It was odd because when you get something like that, and a doctor says, you have high lead levels and there's lead poisoning, then CPS is contacted, and CPS says, well, we need to do like a visit to see what are the conditions at your home, and is there any abuse that's going on? And so to feel like that when as a parent, we were doing everything that we could for the betterment of our child, to have some governmental official come in to look at how we were raising him was, it was shocking, because we felt like you don't get this. This happened because a doctor didn't listen to us, and it was very, very upsetting. And obviously after the people from CPS had come, they realized there wasn't any problem. They were like, wow, you guys are actually really very loving, and he has a great family life and all of that. This is just odd. And so they monitor him for the next couple of years to see how the lead levels were in his blood. And of course they went down because we got him treated for the anemia, and then that kind of like solved that problem, and
Right.
that was no longer an issue. And they had said that there weren't any long-term lasting effects, but we've seen kind of the opposite, especially with the fine motor skill things. So it was really upsetting, because it wasn't just, oh man, this sucks. It was, oh, this sucks. And now there's a governmental agency that's looking at how are we rearing our child. And
Right.
so of course, we felt like failures. I mean, we felt like, how on earth could we bring somebody into this world and then have something like that happen? It was embarrassing. It was
Right.
upsetting. And I'm really, really happy that all kind of got taken care of. But it's a terrible way to get started. And that was when he was maybe 2, 1.5, 2. He was a toddler. And you're just so nervous about everything as a parent, a new parent, and to have something like that happen, it was awful. It was
Sure.
a nightmare for us.
So it sounds like, though, as kind of time has gone on, you guys have figured it out, and you know, from what I've seen, I obviously follow you on Instagram and stuff. So, you know, you do lots of things with Sam, and seems like you guys have a really good relationship. So how have you kind of like built that over time, and you know, found a way to build that relationship despite maybe some of those challenges or things that he's, you know, stressed about? What's that look like as he's grown up?
Yeah, we've got similar interests in a lot of things. So while if you met us, you'd see some similarities. I mean, again, he's not like mini me, but at a very, very early age, we had a Godzilla movie, a DVD. And for whatever reason, he saw that and really kind of was like, oh, can we watch this? Well, sure. So we showed him a Godzilla movie when he was really young, maybe 2 or 3. And it was, he chose it. He picked it out and was like, okay.
Yeah.
And he then became pretty much obsessed with Japanese monsters and Japanese sci-fi and things like that at a very, very early age, like a shockingly early age. And actually, I was just cleaning out the attic last week, and I found his book that he had from preschool. And in preschool, you know, there's all these different activities that you do, and he had a great teacher who saved everything. And so it went through the entire year. It's like, okay, here's what we did for Thanksgiving, and here's an art project we did for Halloween and all that. So I'm going through and I'm looking at it, and this is preschool, so he's 4 or maybe 5. And they said, well, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? For Black Lagoon. So I was like, okay, so he wants to be Creature from the Black Lagoon. They had a thing for Thanksgiving, and it's this haystack, and I think you were supposed to draw something underneath it, or you were supposed to guess what was under it. And so the question was, what's underneath the haystack? And Sam's answer, Godzilla. You know, and this is preschool. So like I said, he very early like attached himself to those sort of things and to comic book characters. And that was me. You know, I've always been very interested in stuff like that. So we had this really big bond with that kind of stuff. And he knew if he expressed any interest in things that I was interested in, that I would, whatever you want to do. Yes, you want to see every Godzilla movie ever made? Great, we're going to get them. You know, my wife built him a Mecha Godzilla costume when he was like 7 that he wore to a comic book convention. I mean, we were doing all this stuff at a very, very early age. So we have this huge family interest in, you know, horror movies and sci-fi and comic books. And you know, we get together and we watch, you know, films in the evening and stuff like that. So that's been one of the things that really has bonded us a lot.
Yeah, cool.
And it was something he completely discovered on his own. I mean, I've always enjoyed Godzilla, but not to the level that he does. So it's been really cool just seeing him. You know, and the funny thing is like, so my wife and I, when we first we talked about it, and we were like, okay, you know, like worst case scenario, what if he grows up and he likes sports? Like, what if he gets really interested in football? And like, we're the parents who are like talking that way, whereas most parents are like, yeah, well, what if he gets into art? What if he likes boys? Like, what then? You know, and we're going, what if he likes football? Do we have to go to games? Like, what if he likes baseball? That's so freaking boring. So we had this talk, and we were like, okay, whatever he's interested in, we will support 100%. So he starts showing interest in something, great, we'll give it a shot. So he did gymnastics, he did horseback riding, and those were things that he came to on his own, and we went, great, we're going to support that. So, you know, I think no matter what it was that he was going to find an interest in, we were going to support him with that, and it just happened to be Godzilla.
That's awesome.
That's
a good story. So what does he think about what you do? And actually, so your wife is an artist as well, right? So what does he think about what you guys do?
I think he really enjoys it because it means that we travel a lot. We have a lot of art show stuff that we're involved in Southern California. And one of his best friends lives in the LA area. And
Okay.
so we go down frequently. I mean, before all of this happened, we were going down maybe twice a month, down to LA. And for us, that's 350 miles. So it's like a 5 or 6 hour drive
Yeah.
down. But we did it frequently. And so he knows a lot of the same people that we know in the art community. And I think he enjoys being around that because it means travel. It means being exposed to, like, new people and new ideas. And everybody's really very warm and welcoming to him. It's not like, oh, hey, who brought this kid? They're
Yeah.
always super excited to see him and meet him. And a lot of our friends have known Sam since, he's been very, very young, and have really enjoyed watching him grow up and all that sort of thing. So I think I think he really enjoys that aspect. He also takes a lot of photographs. So he's had
Oh,
a lot of artwork in shows that we've been, like running. We'll have Sam print out some of his pictures and put them in there too, because while the actual, like, drawing and painting might be difficult, or sewing would be difficult, taking photographs is something he really loves to do. And so he's been doing a lot of that. And whenever we can, we include him in shows too. So I mean, he is an artist. He
yeah, right
has
on.
his, people have bought his work, and he's been in a lot of gallery shows. I mean, it's pretty crazy to
Wow.
go. He's grown up around this. This is just part of his life.
Right. Yeah, not a lot of kids get to experience that, right? You've got your own kind of little unit that
Yeah.
that all kind of creates art together.
Well, and the interesting thing is that we all really, really, really enjoy being around one another.
Yeah.
So there is no place on earth I would rather be than at home with my wife and my son. So when we can do things all together, it's even better. And as far as art goes, a lot of people are starting to associate my wife with me as well. Not that we do similar things, but that we're kind of a package deal. And as
Yeah.
much as we can make our family a package deal, we want to do that. So if I'm in a show, hey, can Lori have stuff in? Hey, maybe can we squeeze something of Sam's in? And people have been very open to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Well,
mean, we're this weird art family.
well, it's a little bit different, right? Like, we talked to lots of musicians on this show, and one of the big things that always comes up is like, okay, well, I have to go on tour, or taking off for 2 or 3 weeks or longer, and leave the family at home. It's a little bit different for you. You guys kind of all roll together, so that's a really nice thing, right? That you
Yeah.
still are doing your passion, but you're able to do it all together.
Yeah, it's fairly unique. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
like the Partridge Family, where it's like everybody's a part of it.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. So, and it's true. A band will go out and they're with the other band members for however long a tour might be, and then they're away from the people that are most important to them, arguably, because not everybody agrees. But for me, my family is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So the more that we can do together, we've kind of built it into that. And I remember when Lori first started getting more interested in doing artwork, she kind of has always had the, well, if you can't beat them, join them sort of mindset. And it was like, look, if you're going to be doing this stuff all the time, I need to accept this and maybe join in with this, because otherwise you're an outsider looking in and you feel like Yoko Ono. I mean, who wants that, right? That's not fun.
Exactly. So how has being a dad changed you?
Well, let's see. Um, that, that's interesting. I can say that when Sam was first born, it meant that I kind of went into a several year hibernation of artwork and going to shows. So that part definitely changed, because as a dad, we all know that there's certain things that you cannot do and provide for a child. I mean, there are things that mothers can only do. I mean, I can't breastfeed, so, like, that is
Yeah.
a real thing that I cannot do. But I could change diapers, so I changed diapers as often as I could. I didn't and couldn't get up in the middle of the night to be with him, to, calm him down, or to just, physically be with him, because I had work the next morning. And, my wife has worked from home a good deal of the time. So she's been the person to do that. So I figured out, okay, what can I do and what can't I do? Well, the things that I can do are be there, to physically be there. So I stopped going to shows for a good long while. And it wasn't because anybody asked me to, but I felt it was hard enough that my wife had to do that all the time. So here comes the weekend, like the time when I could maybe be filling in for her. I couldn't, be selfish and say, oh, well, I'm going to go out tonight. I've got a show to go see, when it was something that I wanted to do versus what I had to do, which was be a dad. So, I for several years, I just went, that's it. I'm just not participating in very much stuff because it's detracting from what's the most important. And, like all the studies and research that I had done, said, those first 5 years are the most critical and crucial ones that you will never get back. And then once they start going to school, things change for the kids. But as a parent, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing out. I didn't want to feel like my son resented his early upbringing or anything. And certainly my wife and I had great childhoods. I mean, I don't think either of us would have changed anything, but we also had parents that were very attentive to us and encouraging. So we wanted to make sure that we were for Sam. So how it's changed me is it made me put my family way before myself.
Okay, so it says it's recording on my side. Does it say it's recording on your side?
Sure does.
Perfect. And here, before we start, I was going to show you this. This is my, I meant to show you this earlier. So I'm in my home office here. I don't know if you can see above my monitor. Yeah.
You got some really nice ones. That one of Chad is one of my favorite ones I've ever done.
I love it. I love it so much. Yep.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I grabbed those from you at I think Bowling. Yeah, 2013.
Yep, I remember that.
So,
and that was when we were done and went outside of the club where they were doing the screening of Filmage, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That was that was such a fun weekend. Holy cow.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That all club show was ridiculous.
It really was. I mean, that still is, like, on my mind, one of the best shows that I've seen. Just to be able to do that and play for so long was really remarkable.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, for sure. Seeing Chad play Stalker, that was on the bucket list for sure for me.
That was always one of Chad's favorites, and it's one of my favorites too. And I always am like, Chad, Stalker. Yeah. So he was always very much about, like, yeah, let's play that. And I know the rest of the guys love playing it, but they just assumed nobody liked it. And boy, are they wrong.
Yeah, I think they are wrong. I think I mean, maybe it wouldn't be like, your first single when you're putting out the album or something, but for the big all fans, yeah, we love it.
Well, speaking of singles, so this is just totally, one of those weird things, but my absolute least favorite all song, Hot Plate, was supposed to be a single.
Yeah. I was chatting with Scott about that, and he was saying, it just, they were kind of feeling the pressure to put that out as a single, and it just didn't sit well with him. It's not one of my favorites either. I love that album. Percolator is one of my favorite albums. But
album's great. That song is terrible.
It's terrible. It's unusual. It's just kind of silly in not an endearing way.
No. And silly, I don't have any problem with. Like you said, not in an endearing way. It's just like it's an embarrassing silly. Like, at the time, it could have been fun doing it in the studio, and then afterwards you go, ooh, but we put it out.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. We're on the same page there. Sorry, and thanks for coming back and taking more of your evening. I know you probably have stuff to do. So we can kind of keep it rolling here. When we left off, I had asked you what had changed as a result of becoming a dad, and you were talking about going on a hiatus for a few years in terms of going to shows and stuff like that. And I think that's, especially when kids are really young, I think that's a pretty common thing. Like you talked about priorities shifting.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one, right? There's also like the tiredness and, not having as much time. There's not like a time when often, the baby's only sleeping for, a few hours at a time. And so if someone's going out, the other person is carrying the load, right? So,
Right.
So there's all those things.
And we're actually in a position where when we moved to Stockton, we had no family out here at all. So there was no, grandparents, there were no aunts and uncles, brothers or sisters, nothing. Yeah. So we were 100% on our own in that regard. Although Lori's mom did stick around for a while afterwards. She was out with us for a few months, and that certainly helped. But, once she had gone back to Wyoming, we still had just the two of us. And, I'm not about to put, my wife through all of the evenings, being, on top of everything else, me then not being there. So, yeah, the hiatus was just, it made the most sense.
Yeah, kind of a natural thing, but you're right back into it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it got to a certain point too, where it was like, it was really fun for me because I was like, okay, now I can go out occasionally to shows. And so I did. And then I got to a point where I went, well, if Sam wants to come with me, he can do that too. And, that was a really fun thing. And Sam will go to things with me. He's not super crazy about it. I think the volume of shows is a bit for him, even though, he's always had, earplugs and everything. It's a little on the loud end for him. So he doesn't want to go as much, but in fact, one time Descendants were playing, I think it was the FYF Fest down in Los Angeles. And so we all went down for that. And it was either that, maybe it was that, or is the Santa Monica Civic. I don't recall which one. But anyway, point being that, we got there and Stefan and Natalie had brought their kids too. And Sam and Felix, Stefan's and Natalie's son, they stayed in the hotel room playing with Legos. And so both, Felix's dad is getting ready to play this big show. Yeah. Felix doesn't care. He's just hanging out with Sam playing Legos. So I was like, okay, if Sam's wanting to do that instead, that's fine. Of course, they were like, 7 and 8 at the time or something, but it was pretty great. So, but nowadays, Sam will occasionally want to come to shows with me, and that feels really, really good. He loves music, so, but he's not as big a fan of going out and actually being at a show, but he loves listening to stuff.
Yeah, he probably, in the same way you like to do things that interest him because you just like to see him in his element, he probably likes to see you in your element too. I know kids get a kick out of that, right? Like, oh, my dad or my mom is into this thing. And so I'm kind of interested in it too, just by virtue of their parent being interested in it. Do you remember the first show you went to with them?
It was probably, I think it was Devo. In San Francisco. And
that's a good first one.
And again, it's one of those things where you go, okay, yeah, I'm being a really great parent until you get to the venue and people at Devo. So this is the thing I didn't get. People are at Devo and it's an indoor thing in San Francisco, like right in front of us smoking pot.
Oh.
And of course, I've got Sam up on my shoulder so that he can see. So the pot smoke is going right into his face. And, we actually even called security over and I was pointing at them because you're not supposed to be smoking in the venue in the first place. And it's an indoor thing, and I'm pointing at people in front of me and I'm like, come on, I have a kid here and I'm trying to mime that out. And they looked at me and just shrugged their shoulders. And I went, are you kidding me? So he loved it. He loved seeing Devo. And then as we were on our way out, he was really small. He must have been maybe 5. I was carrying him and he just had his head laying on my shoulder and he was like, Dad, I feel really tired. And I thought, Oh my gosh. I took my son to his first show and he got a contact high from being a stoner at Devo. Like I could
Yeah,
understand if, we had gone and seen like I don't know, like some metal show or
yeah,
like Fish or
yeah,
something, but Devo? Really? Like
yeah.
so yeah, I think Devo was his first. He's seen They Might Be Giants a number of times. He's actually seen Devo a few times. Descendants, of course, he's seen many times. He really surprised me. He wanted to go see the English Beat open up for Rancid a few years back,
Cool.
and so we went and it's great because when he goes, he's treated like royalty. So
Yeah,
like his experience of going to shows is far different than most kids.
yeah.
So,
Gets the
and I
VIP.
love
Yeah,
that. And the
yeah,
funny
that's cool.
thing is like he will come to a point in his life where he looks back and goes, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this or I met these people."
Yeah,
But in the moment, he's just like, "Oh, whatever. It was kind of fun."
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That's really cool. But it's funny, yeah, like concerts, especially kind of the indoor ones, the stadiums type ones, they can be a little bit much sometimes, and you get the wrong people around you, and it can really ruin the experience, right? So
Yeah.
luckily with most punk rock stuff, I mean, save for some of the kind of violent stuff that goes on there sometimes, usually people are pretty understanding, pretty nice, pretty
Yeah,
friendly.
they seem to
So
be.
yeah.
That's
So
always been my experience. I found too at even like the really, really big like punk festivals and stuff like that. I mean, my experience has always been that people have been really on good behavior, and I'm using air quotes because there's the certain amount of like whatever that goes on, but by and large, audiences know how to act. They really
for
they're
sure.
fairly respectful and stuff. So, but you go to something that is not that and there's no telling. I mean, it's like a wild card.
For sure, for sure. So, Chris, would you call yourself a rad dad?
Yeah, I guess. I was thinking about that earlier, and I was like, oh yeah, it's the Rad Dad Show. Yeah, okay. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hope that I'm being a good dad for my son. More than anything, that's what I want. Um, as a teacher also, I'm always a little leery of when adults are trying to come off as really cool
Yeah,
because for a kid that's potentially dangerous, and it has been my experience almost 100% that any teacher that is trying to seem cool is a pedophile or a narcissist, and like without question. And so I am highly suspect of any adult that's attempting to seem cool around kids. So I would never call myself that. Somebody might, but it definitely wouldn't be me because like I said, anytime I see an adult who is trying to gain like the interest of children, it's a giant red flag.
right, right. So I think the first thing you said was, yeah, I think I am a rad dad. So, like, what's your definition of a rad dad? If we're not talking about you, but
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
you're thinking about other dads, what makes a dad rad?
Yeah, somebody who puts their kids first and their joy comes from their kids having joy. Somebody who sees them as being their own individual person and celebrating them for who they are rather than who they want them to be. And in that regard, yeah, I think I've done a really good job with my son. I think both my wife and I have done a great job with it. I don't want to say it's me because it certainly hasn't been, but I think anytime I see a parent that is just super excited for whatever their kid's doing and is really very supportive of whatever decisions they want to make, that's a rad parent for sure, no question about it.
Yeah. So it's just, I, I guess, being part of your kid's experience, not putting your sort of spin on what you think they should be,
Yeah.
and just kind of enjoying what they've become.
Yeah, I remember I had a friend who actually had kids before we did, and when Lori and I got married, we were kind of some of the first people that we knew that were having kids. So we were a bit of pioneers in our age group.
Yeah.
But she had known some other people who had kids, and I remember some of our friends were talking about, oh, I'm so proud that my kids don't listen to like Barney and this and that, and I thought, well, they don't listen to it because you don't play it for them. And so I thought, well, that's really something stupid to feel proud about because you've never exposed your kids to that. So, oh, great. Your kid claims to like Neil Young. Good for you. You're so much more enlightened than anyone else. But I guarantee if you sat around listening to Barney, your kids would like it too. So it's not that they don't listen to it, it's you don't expose them to it.
Right.
And I wanted to make sure that with Sam that we were doing everything that we could do, just like if there was anything that he liked or that he showed any interest in, that we push that instead of going, all right, well, you need to get a mohawk when you're 3.
Yeah.
Because, okay, that's fine, but he didn't choose that. And then the one time, so it was during the summer and I had just shaved my head. And this was when I had hair. So I shaved my head and it was like, oh, cool. It's, it's good for the summer. And Sam has this beautiful semi wavy red hair, like bright red, almost orange hair. And he was watching me shave my head, and he must have been, oh, he was 7. I know that for sure. It was the summer of 2010, and he was watching me shave my head, and he goes, "Hey, I think I'd like to do that." And I went, "Great!" So I got the clippers and immediately shaved his head. And as soon as we were finished, he just looks at it and just goes, "Yeah, I don't like that. I don't think I want to do that." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. It's going to be like that for a little bit." But, it was, he decided.
Yeah.
So, yep, we're going to do that. And and actually it's so funny because like just today, he has hair, I don't. So I'll occasionally like comb his hair or, like be playing with it or whatever. And I was doing that today. He's 17. So I'm doing that in the kitchen, and I said, "Hey, what'd you think about a mohawk? You've got such a great head of hair. Could we do that?" And he was just like, "No, thanks, Dad. I'm really happy with it how it is." And I was like, damn it, But it was like, it's, again, I don't want to shape him and say he needs to be this or that. So when he wants to do something, we do it.
Yeah.
Which I think is really important. I think parents should do that. Listen to your kids.
But obviously you're going to walk that line between kind of letting them figure things out on their own, but also trying to show them things that you think are great too, right?
Yeah, of course.
So you're always kind of walking that line. I've had the same experience with my daughter. I'm like, "Come on, let's listen to Blitzkrieg Bop. Like, you'll love this song. Hey ho, let's go. The words are really easy to remember." And she's like, yeah, whatever. And, after a while, she kind of starts to remember, yeah, hey ho, let's go. But I want to listen to Taylor Swift, or I want to listen to, whatever else, and that's fine. That's great. Actually,
I think as a parent, it's a good idea to expose your kids to a lot of things and then figure out, okay, well, what really sticks? And then when you figure out what sticks, you encourage that. And for me, oh man, it was so cool because we have, I guess they don't even call it iTunes anymore. It's like Apple Music or whatever. So all of my music that I have on my, personal library and my playlists and everything, Sam has always had access to everything. And I was doing something around the house and I hear him in his room singing. And I'm like, what is he singing? And I go to the door and I'm listening, and I can't really quite make it out. It sounds vaguely familiar. And, I'm like, what are you in there singing, buddy? And it was like some really deep cut Talking Heads song.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, I have it, but it's not something that I listen to very often. So I was like, how do you even know that? And he said, "Oh, I listen to a lot of your stuff." And, I was just blown away because it's something that I do have. It's my music, but he discovered it completely on his own. It wasn't because I played it for him or anything. And it could have been that, a friend of his has said, "Hey, I like this weird band." And he goes, "Well, I think my dad's got a lot of that." So that felt really good, knowing that he's exploring things on his own and developing interests that I'm not pushing on him, but I do expose him to a lot of stuff, and hopefully some of it sticks.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things you can do for your kid, right? Is just expose them to lots of different things and see what they're interested in, right? You'll never know otherwise.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's the same thing. You talked about it earlier that like you're just totally not into sports, and I'm the same way.
Yeah.
So I always struggle with that with my daughter. Like, she's kind of at the age, she's 4 years old. And so it's about the time you start putting them in lessons, soccer lessons or whatever. And I always kind of struggle with that because my initial thought is like, oh no, I'm really not into sports. I don't want to have to like go coach the soccer team or whatever. But you know, you step back and you're like, oh, maybe she's going to be the best soccer player in the world, and I'll never know if you know, if I never expose her to it, and maybe she'll love it, and if she loves it, I'm sure I'll love it. So
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is because, you will pick up on whatever they then become interested in.
Yeah.
And I do want to remind you, horseback riding and gymnastics also fall in that sports world.
Yes.
So that's maybe a little bit more palpable to
It's
a parent
true.
not really into a sport, because those are two things that Sam wanted to try, and we did those for a while, and it was really fun. We enjoyed that. So there's other things. I don't curling. It maybe should develop an interest in curling. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, we have a curling rink just down the street. Actually, I used to curl in high school and a little bit in
Come on, you're
universities.
Canadian.
Yeah.
You guys know curling. We don't down here, but
You should. It's fun.
yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about how, you guys had some kind of struggles and some medical stuff that had come up after Sam was born. How about before? Did you have any fears about becoming a dad? Was it like a conscious decision? Was it?
It was definitely a conscious decision for me. I've liked kids. Before I decided that I was going to be a teacher, I thought, well, I want to figure out, do I really want to be doing that? Do I want to be around kids? So I had a job working in college as a summer day camp counselor. So every summer I came back to, my dad was in the Air Force at the time, and the Air Force base that he was stationed at had a summer, program for kids.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I could try that for a summer and see if that's something I like and I want to do. And I discovered really early on that, yeah, I did want to do that. And I found that, a lot of times if we would go someplace and friends had kids or whatever, I tended to be the person who enjoyed talking to them. And I've always talked to kids kind of like they're mini adults, so not down to them, but just like to them. Like I'll talk to babies like that, and they have no idea what I'm saying. But I guess I talk to pets like that too. So like dogs and whatever, I'm like, we can't go for a walk because it's raining. I mean, you have to look outside and know. But anyway, I just assume everybody knows what I'm talking about. So I did summer day camp for a while, and I thought, okay, well, I really enjoy this. I work well with kids. It would be great to be a dad at some point. So in the back of my mind, I figured, okay, I'd like to do that. And when Lori, my wife, and I had first met, very early on, we kind of went over a lot of like, what are you looking for in life, and where do you want to be, and all that kind of stuff. And she was just hitting everything right for me. All of the answers that I would possibly want to hear, she was giving me and saying, yeah, I want to do this, and these are things I find important. These are things I don't care about. Here are my interests. Here are my dislikes. And we went through all of these things, and I just asked, would you ever be interested in having kids? No, definitely don't want to ever have kids. And I went, okay. And so before we got married, I, in the back of my mind, went, okay, can I really honestly be happy being in a relationship where I know that the other person is not interested in kids? And I thought, well, that would probably be a problem to me, but not with Lori. And so I was so interested in being with her that I completely went, okay, if I don't ever have kids, that's fine, because then I'll just be able to have a long life with her, and maybe we travel a lot, and maybe we do really fun stuff. Who knows? And so I just figured then that's not an option anymore, so I'll never talk about it. And I didn't. So we got married, and for years, I never brought it up. I never thought about it, nothing. And she finally, at one point, just said, what do you think about having a child? And I went, that would be good. And she said, I think I'd like to. And I said, well, but hold on now. I mean, we talked about this before, and you were not interested in this. And she said, I know. But I thought about it, and I thought, you're the person I'm going to be with forever. And I can't possibly think of anybody I'd rather want to have a child with. So while I normally wouldn't want to do that, I do with you. So maybe we should. And I thought, well, okay, that sounds good to me. And as soon as Sam was born, we were like, that's it, we're done. That one is done. That is absolutely it. And I jokingly told people when we had him, if they asked, because as a parent, people ask. You have one.
Sure.
Immediately they want to know, well, when's the next one? And I'm always thinking, what's wrong with this one? What do I need another one for?
Yeah.
I mean, why are you asking me that? So I eventually just started telling people I don't have love in my heart for more than one. And so that shut people up immediately. Yeah. So they'd go, hey, you're going to have another one? And I just say, and with all sincerity, I don't have love in my heart for more than one. And they'd stop asking. And they were like, okay.
What do I say to that?
You don't. You just kind of go, all right. So I had always really wanted to be a dad. And when Lori decided she wanted to be a mom, it was just great. And so I didn't have any, reservations or anything about that. I was like, okay, well, this is great. This is what I kind of signed up for. As the pregnancy went on, I got worried that, it would be really difficult for Lori. And it was. I mean, she was in labor for like almost 4 days with Sam.
Oh my God.
And, he broke her tailbone on the way out. And, so she had a really long recovery time once he was born. But, I didn't really worry too much about anything. I was just like, all right, cool. We're going to do our best job. And that's that.
Yeah. And you guys, you sound like you didn't have like family around to help. So you were kind of flying solo.
Yeah, which, in a way was really, really good because, we both get along very, very well with our parents. But to be able to raise your kid with whatever decisions you want and not, like what your family thinks you should be doing was really, really nice, and our family very much respected our decisions about what we wanted to do and everything. And they've never been, like ones to try and, well, you need to do this and you need to do, I really was very glad that we could just be independent and raise him however we saw fit. And if we were making mistakes, they were our mistakes to make, so we couldn't be resentful of like the in-laws and their meddling or anything. That didn't exist. So it was great, actually.
That's an interesting interesting perspective, right? Because I mean, on one hand, it's great to have some extra help around sometimes, but on the other hand, I totally hear what you're saying. Sometimes it's just like, okay, all right. Like, I get it. That's the way you did it. We're going to do it this way. So,
and we both Lori and I both turned out well. I mean, I think we turned out well. So I didn't feel like, either one of us had any parental damage, too far. Right. And, so I knew it would be great if either of our sets of parents were around, but, they just kind of let us do our thing.
Cool. So speaking of parents, what tell me about your relationship with your dad. What was that like sort of growing up? How did that influence you as a father?
Well, my dad, I really very much looked up to. I still do. He seems to know most things, and he's not a know-it-all, but he seems to know a lot of stuff. He was the dad that always read Consumer Report, and he had an opinion if you were getting a car, if you need to know how to do taxes or any of that stuff. He seemed to know how to do that stuff. So I always looked up to him like, if I need answers, my dad probably knows them. And he always seemed to. He was always really super supportive of me and my brother, and he was the breadwinner for the family. My mom would occasionally have jobs, but it was typically my dad. He was in the Air Force, he was in the Navy, he was going to college for a while, but he was always primarily the breadwinner. So my mom was like the fun one that we played with more. My dad we didn't play with as much, but he was always super kind, very encouraging, supportive. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better dad in all, honesty. He was ideal, growing up. And as an adult, I mean, we've become really very good friends as well. So, that was an interesting transition, and we're starting to do that with my son too, where we're becoming friends. We're still parents, but we're friends, and that's a really nice thing. So I think, my dad and I, we've always been very close. We still are, and he's somebody that I very much looked up to, and I really wanted to try and be as good as I felt he was to me, to my son. So,
Yeah.
and I guess that's kind of, maybe a bit more unusual because, in the punker world, oftentimes people are coming from, like a single parent and all that. But both my wife and I had very happily married, moms and dads, and it made for our relationship to be one that we had the same sort of expectations, because
Right.
like that's kind of how it was in our family. I mean, that's just kind of how it has to be.
Yeah, it's neat to see that kind of evolution of your relationship with your dad as
Yeah.
you get a little bit older, right? It kind of, can change from, um, it can get kind of stricter through your teenage years or whatever. You can kind of become a bit more friendly as you get older. Certainly it changed, at least it changed for me. I'm curious if it did for you when you had Sam. What was that like for your dad? How did things change at that point?
Well, I definitely understand now, um, that the torture that I put my dad through of like teasing and like bothering him with things that I very purposefully do,
Yeah.
I now see my son doing to me. And like Lori will laugh about it, and she's like, it's just coming back to you, don't you? And I'm like, I know, like, because Sam's almost the same height as me. He'll do the Benny Hill patting me on the
Yeah.
head thing, and it's like, okay, all right, I get it. So I think I've become more, there's more of a kinship that I now have with my dad, because I'm like, okay, I get it. I put you through some torturous things, just teasing him.
Yeah.
And like I'm seeing Sam doing it to me now, and I can't get mad at him, because I did the exact same thing, so. But I was never like, like a tearaway kid that was doing things that were dangerous or illegal or whatever. So I mean, I never really, worried him or stressed him out. And Sam is the most um trustworthy child in the history of the world. Like I mean, we always joked about it and said that he was the self-correcting child, in that if he ever did anything that he felt was out of line, he came to us and would go, should I go to my room? And we're like, I don't know, if you think you should, maybe. Okay, I feel like I've let you down, I'm leaving. And we're like, okay, I guess if you want to do that. So he's like, he's so awesome because, he's regulated himself so that we haven't had to.
Yeah. Well, obviously that's, part of your doing, right? Teaching him kind of that right from wrong, gave him
Yeah.
that compass early on.
Oh, it's fully ingrained in his brain. Like he
Yeah.
has a very, very clear sense of what's right and wrong. And while I like to think that we've encouraged that, by no means have we, had any kind of punishment or negative consequences or really anything. He just has a very innate sense of right and wrong and honor and things like that he adheres to. And it's great.
That's really neat. That's neat. So I have to admit, the other night I looked up your TED Talk.
Yeah.
You did a TED Talk, and it was like one of the local TED Talks, I think. And you talked about career versus passion.
Yeah.
And so that fits in really nicely with one of the questions. We kind of ask the same questions to everybody generally on this show. And one of the questions is kind of like, how do you achieve your balance? So if it's with musicians, it's like, well, how do you manage being away from your family while you're on tour? But for you highlighted in that talk, you've got a career that you feel very strongly about. You've been doing for a long time, but you've also got this, I mean, call it a passion. It's kind of almost your second career.
It is.
The way I kind of view it anyway. I mean, you do put out a lot of work. It's not just a hobby, obviously. And then you've clearly got this strong connection with your family. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you make that all work?
Well, for me, it's always about priorities. So like whatever is truly the most important thing should take precedent when need be.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm working on things, and like both Lori and I both have this way of handling things. If Sam comes to us and says, hey, do you want to watch something, or do you want to play Yahtzee? Do you want to go for a walk? Can we maybe go to the store? Well, not now, but like any of that other stuff, if he comes to us and says, hey, I'd like to do this, or I need something, we stop what we're doing. And, even if I'm in the middle of working on like a drawing or whatever, it can wait, it can wait. My son can't. And he's certainly never been bratty or pushy or anything, but when it seems that we need time to be doing that, he and my wife are always my number one priority. So if for any reason they ask for something, I do the best that I can to give that to them when they need it, so that I'm not getting my priorities goofed up. Because the reason I'm doing the artwork and stuff is, I enjoy it and everything, but it's also helping to pay bills and stuff that allow for me to have the sort of lifestyle that we have, which is doing what we like to do and doing things that are enjoyable for our family. So if I'm working against that, that doesn't make any sense. So, I always keep in the back of my mind, all right, fine. So Lori has a basement studio. That's where she does all of her sewing and everything. And so when she will text me or whatever and say, hey, you ready to stop? I'm usually like, yes, let's stop. Let's watch a movie. Let's hang out. Yeah. And, now we feel like we've won the lottery. If Sam's going, hey, do you want to watch something with me? And I'm like, you want to hang out? Yeah. So for me, it's always it's priorities. Priorities, like really drive things. And when those things that are higher priorities to me come up, I drop what I'm doing for them. And that could be, my family, or I could be working on artwork, and Bill Stevenson calls me and says, hey, Chris, we're going on tour in Brazil, we need a t-shirt design tomorrow. That then is a priority. Yeah. So okay, well, I'll stop everything else and I'll work on that. So, it's priorities, and it's having a really good sense of those priorities. And I think also I'm a really good time manager. I have a very good internal clock. I know how long I've been working. I have a very good sense of what do I need to accomplish and how long will that take? So I know if I need to get something done, a drawing, and I know it's going to take only a couple hours, I sometimes will wake up a couple hours early, get it done, and then carry on with my day, because then it's out of the way, Yeah. So I do tend to be really very good about, having projections for like how long a project would be. And knowing that means I can set aside time in my days to get that accomplished quickly, so that I can do other things. Because like nothing is better for me than the end of the night to go for a walk with my wife, watch some TV shows together, and like really go, everything's done for the day. I'm not preoccupied.
Yeah, that's an amazing skill, because I know that's something I struggle with, is just kind of procrastinating and putting things off. And
I still procrastinate.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even just like, it feels so good to check things off the list, right? And just get it done. And then you say to yourself, why didn't I just do that sooner? That was so easy.
I know. And, and it's funny you say check things off the list, because like I literally, like, this drives me every day. These are all the commissions that I have to get done. Crazy. I check it off the list and I go, okay, moving on. But, to be able to do that is really nice. But I'll tell people like all the time, because I am like a really good time manager, if somebody says, hey, do you think you could do a t-shirt design for us? Okay, sure, I can. When is it due? Whenever is fine. I will not do it. Because to me, it's not important. You didn't give me a deadline. I have no time frame. So I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to completely forget about it. And then, if you come to me and, like a week before and go, hey, well, we really need this. We're going on tour next week. You didn't give me a deadline. If you tell me I need it Wednesday at noon, you will have it before Wednesday at noon. Yeah. There's no question. But give me a deadline.
Interesting. Yeah, so you work on those deadlines. You like to know when things are due.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, at school, when we're doing plays and stuff like that, opening night is our deadline. Yeah. It's all got to be done by then. Like, we can't open and go, oh man, I didn't get a costume for this person. Were you kidding me? Like, that is it. And to me, a deadline is a deadline. It's like, that's when things are done. So you get it done before, and I'll put it off until the last minute because like maybe it's something I don't want to do. If I want to do it and it's for my own personal use, I'll get it done, the next day because it was just a pleasure for me to do. But if it's a job that I'd rather not do, I'll wait until the very last minute, but I will get it done. It will be done on its deadline.
Yeah. That's great. So we have a feature on this show. I don't know if you've listened to any of the other episodes. We always do this thing called the Rad Dad Bad Dad feature. So kind of an opportunity for you to tell us a Rad Dad moment. So kind of that, blue ribbon moment, a time you felt just really awesome. It could be anything.
Yeah.
And also, if you can think of one of those like dad fail moments, like, oh, I can't believe I did that.
Okay. So one of the best moments for me, Sam must have been, I don't know, he was 6 or 7, and it was my birthday. And I had gotten, his birthday's close to mine. I'm the 12th of October and he's the 24th of October. So on my birthday, I had ordered some things for him. And so he and Lori had done, like my birthday, and they had given me stuff and everything. And we have this, we've used this chair, and we call it the surprise chair. And I said, get in the surprise chair. So he went and sat down in the surprise chair, and I gave him, something for him on my birthday. And he burst into tears. And I was like, what's wrong? And he was just like, you thought of me on your birthday. And it was like, that was like one of the best feelings ever, because he really, really understood the idea of putting somebody before yourself. And I think he actually learned a lot from that, because he is a very, very selfless person. He will put others before himself so often. And, I think that really, like, we showed him that, we didn't, tell him that's what you should do. So for me, that was like one of those moments that I just go, yep, that was one of the best things I've ever done, because I think it hit home for him in a very, very big way.
And that's a nice moment as a parent too, because kids, almost you can't help but teach them to be very self-centered when they're young, right? It's kind of all about them.
Yeah.
And it is all about them. It should be. But when they start to understand, that they can do things for other people and that makes them feel good. Wow, that's like an amazing thing to see them kind of learn, right? That selflessness. So yeah, that's cool. So do you have a dad fail moment, a bad dad moment that comes to your mind?
Man, that comes to mind.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, this wasn't like a fail or anything that was like, it like all dads have experienced this. So the very, very first time I was trimming Sam's fingernails, he was like a couple months old, maybe a month old or something like that. Their fingernails, they're just like, they're flexible. They're not even like really like calcified or anything. So like I said, there were things that I could do that I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And I enjoyed changing diapers. I was like, I'll change them, fine. Lori, she can do it, but I will do it if I'm around. So I thought, okay, well, I'll take on like giving him haircuts, and I'll like trim his fingernails, and I'll do stuff like that. So I'm trimming his fingernails. And I accidentally got like a little piece of skin too.
Yeah.
And he started bleeding. And it was the very first time that he had ever been cut, like since birth. Yep. And so to me, I just went, oh, I've ruined him. I've brought him, and to me, I'm, of course, as, like a young parent, you're going, what have I done? I've scarred him for life. And of course I didn't. But at that moment, I felt terrible. And it was no big deal. It really didn't affect him in the least bit, but I felt affected by that. And another one like that. So we're here at home. Lori had gone out, and like, early on, she didn't do a whole lot of like leaving and or whatever. She was usually with Sam. She had something she was going to be doing, by herself. And I said, don't worry about it. I got him. We're here. We're fine. He was a toddler. He must have been, 2 or 3. And so we were in the living room playing and doing whatever. And, he said, well, I'm going to get something from my room. So he goes running down the hallway, and I hear him start crying. And he was gone less than a minute. But, I hear him start bawling. I'm like, what? And he comes back into the living room, and his lip is just bleeding. And I'm like, what happened? And he said, I don't know. I ran into my room and I fell. And here I am going, great. The one time Lori goes out and I tell her, don't worry, he runs out. He has a very, very tiny scar from where this happened. And he honestly doesn't know what happened either. And I don't know what happened, but I felt awful because I said, no, I've got this. It's going to be fine. You can trust me. And so I felt, like as a dad, like that was a failure. But, those were relatively minor things,
Yeah. I mean, that I don't know if I can even count the number of times I've like said, oh, I'm just going to go into the kitchen just to get whatever. And then in the living room, you just hear thud, like the unmistakable sound of a child's body hitting the ground. And it's like, oh my God, of course it had to happen then.
Oh, of course. And neither one of those things were big deals, but in the moment, you certainly blow it out of proportion and you go, oh no, what have I done to my kid? I can see 40 years in the future, they're sitting on a therapist couch talking about this exact moment.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's, interesting. One of the things that kind of all parents share is like, we've all kind of been through it, right? If some incident like that happens to you and you feel like the worst dad ever, it's happened to 100 other dads, right? And so that's why it's good to talk about it, because it kind of helps you realize, oh, I'm not alone here.
And it's funny because like, there are those things that as parents we all do, but we don't realize that we do. For example, like, when Sam was young, and I know you've done this, but we'd be on road trips and, he'd be napping in the back, and like you start getting really nervous and you start looking in the rear view mirror and you grab the leg and you kind of shake it. You go, okay, he's not dead. All right. I was just, because like this spontaneous death stuff, like every single parent is like, he's been sleeping too long. He hasn't moved. Is he breathing? So you kind of shake him or you poke him and then you're like, oh, okay, he's crying. Okay, I can deal with crying. Dad, I can't deal with, but crying is fine. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my daughter, she just had her tonsils out a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
And prior to that, she sounded like a train was going through her bedroom when she was sleeping. Like she snored so loud. Oh. But I loved it in a way because I could hear her down the hall like, oh, she's fine.
She's not dead.
But now, doesn't make a peep. I like the first, I don't know, few nights, I would sneak in there and get my head right up next to her mouth and like, oh yeah, she's breathing.
Yeah.
And it was like something I took for granted, right? Obviously she was struggling to get enough oxygen. That's the whole reason that was happening. So, good that we removed her tonsils, but it's kind of a funny thing. So Chris, what's next for you? What do you have going on kind of in your art world right now? You're obviously working on commissions and stuff like that. Any other big projects, exciting things? You did Punk Rock and Paintbrushes just recently, the online auction.
Yeah. Lori's got another phase of an art show that she was working on. It was called Tales from Derry, which was a Stephen King themed art show at Sugarmint Galleries in Pasadena. And I guess we're going to be doing a second phase to that, chapter 2. Or is chapter 2 just the It stuff, honey? It's Stephen King, right? Yeah. Okay. So it's Stephen King stuff. So that's going to be coming up pretty soon. I decided while I was on break that I wanted to do some zines again. And the last time I did a zine was in 1988. So I figure it's time, right?
Yeah.
You know, I kind of need to do another one. So I've got a few zine ideas that I want to do.
Cool.
So I'll be working on those. Greg Hetson, guitar player for Bad Religion, Circle Jerks, has gotten a hold of me and wants to do a children's book. So during
cool.
summer, I think is the time that I really need to focus on that, because obviously that's a really big undertaking, and it's something that he and I have been talking about for actually a couple of years now. And you know, he got a hold of me again recently and was like, "Hey, Chris, we ready to start working on that?" And you know, yeah, I am, and that's probably one of the biggest things is like, you know, and Greg came to me, you know, he was like, I have this idea for a book. I haven't seen anybody do this before, and I'd really like you to do it with me. And, you know, not only is that a huge honor, but it's also like the idea of the book is great. So I need to get on that. I've been doing a lot of paintings. I plan on continuing doing commissions during this summer break. Ordinarily, I'd be traveling during the summer and wanting to organize art shows or you know, just being at festivals and stuff. So since that's not happening, I feel like I really need to be kicking up, you know, like my production. So you know, I think mainly just doing a lot of paintings is kind of where I'm going.
Nice. It's funny you mentioned Greg Hetson. We just put out an interview with him last week. So
that's
Christian,
right.
Yeah. So that's funny timing. So Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. Do you have any final kind of words of wisdom to either dads or maybe future dads, dads who are expecting?
I guess, you know, be patient with your kids, and listen to them. You know, a lot of times I think we get so wrapped up in what it is that we want and what we want to hear that we don't always listen to what they're really saying. Listen to your kids, support wherever they want to go with things, and try and be understanding, because your kid is not just, you know, like a little version of you. It's somebody else, and they may very much deviate from your interests or likes or whatever. But be supportive of them, and know that if you are, they're going to turn out pretty all right. And you know, I think that's one of the best things, is just to really listen to them and support what their interests are. You know, they might grow out of things, they may not, and as long as they know that when they become adults, that they can say, my parents really did value what I had to say, that's important. So I mean, I think that's the best advice I can give.
That's great advice. Great advice. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time today. Really appreciate it. It was really fun talking to you. And,
yeah, it's good seeing you too.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, thanks. Take care. See you, Chris.